Security Chief Lyra Harrison stood at the observation deck of Outpost Theta 7, watching the crystalline storms rage across the station's protective shields. The phenomenon was beautiful but deadly, sheets of electromagnetically charged particles that could fry both organic matter and electronics in seconds. After 8 years of service on this remote human outpost, she'd learned to find beauty in such danger. The station's proximity alert chimed, pulling her attention to the readings. Something was approaching through the storm, something that shouldn't be able to survive out there. Lyra's augmented vision zoomed in, catching glimpses of a small craft skillfully weaving between the crystal formations. "Control, are you tracking this?" she asked, already moving toward the emergency response bay. "Affirmative, Chief. No transponder signal. Configuration unknown." The craft's movements were too precise for autopilot, but no known species could pilot through a crystal storm without shield technology. Yet here it was, approaching the station's auxiliary dock, like a ghost through the tempest. Lyra assembled her response team quickly. "Full containment protocols. We don't know what we're dealing with." The mystery vessel docked with surprising gentleness. As Lyra's team surrounded the airlock, their weapons ready, the outer door cycled open. What emerged was not what anyone expected. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall, its iridescent scales shifting colors like oil on water. Despite its impressive height, it moved with obvious pain, one hand pressed against its side where a dark fluid seeped between its fingers. "Please," it said through a translator device, its voice carrying both authority and desperation. "I seek asylum. The fate of multiple worlds depends on my survival." Lyra's tactical training screamed caution, but something in the alien's bearing, a dignity that transcended species, made her pause. "Medical team to Auxiliary Dock 3, she ordered, lowering her weapon slightly. "But keep containment protocols active." The alien's multifaceted eyes focused on her. "I am Ambassador Zyrix of the Celestial Concordat. There are those who would prevent me from reaching the upcoming peace summit." "They?" The ambassador stumbled, scales dulling noticeably. Lyra moved forward, catching the alien before it could fall. Up close, she could see the wound was worse than it appeared. Some kind of energy weapon had left traces of destructive radiation. "The summit isn't for 3 days, Lyra said, helping Zyrix to a containment stretcher as the medical team arrived. "Why come here?" "This station isn't equipped for diplomatic." "Because, Security Chief," Zyrix interrupted, "your outpost's obscurity is precisely what I needed. My pursuers would never expect." The ambassador's translator crackled with interference as another wave of pain hit. The station's alarm suddenly blared to life. "Chief Harrison, 3 vessels just emerged from the storm. Military configuration, heavily armed." Lyra looked down at the injured ambassador, whose eyes now held a plea. In that moment, she knew her decision would change everything. The station was minimal military value. That's why she'd been posted here after the incident on Europa. But now she faced a choice between protocol and protecting someone who might be the only hope for peace. "Lock down all external communications," she ordered. "Route emergency power to the shields. And get the ambassador to secure medical." She turned to Zyrix. "I don't know what game you're playing, but if you're telling the truth, I'll do my best to keep you alive to reach that summit." The ambassador's scales shifted to a deep blue. "Thank you, Chief Harrison. I sense you understand the weight of choices that affect more than ourselves." As Lyra's team moved into defensive positions, she allowed herself a grim smile. She'd been seeking redemption for Europa for 3 years. Perhaps protecting this mysterious ambassador was her chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. The crystal storm intensified outside, as if nature itself was responding to the tension of the moment. Lyra knew that somewhere out there, through that deadly veil of crystalline lightning, enemies were approaching. But they'd have to get through her first, and she'd learned a thing or two about surviving impossible situations. The real question was, what had she just involved her station and crew in? As she watched the ambassador being rushed to medical, Lyra had a feeling she'd find out soon enough. The next few hours would either prove her right to trust her instincts or remind her why she'd been banished to this remote post in the first place. Either way, there was no turning back now. The pursuing vessels wasted no time testing Outpost Theta 7's defenses. Energy beams lanced through the crystal storm, partially diffused by the natural phenomenon, but still powerful enough to make the station's shields flare brilliant blue. In the medical bay, Lyra watched Dr. Rena Vale work on Ambassador Zurich's wounds with a combination of human and alien medical technology. The ambassador's scales had taken on a pale, sickly hue. The weapon was designed specifically for their biology, Dr. Vale explained, her dark eyes troubled. It's breaking down cellular structures at a quantum level. I can slow it, but this facility isn't equipped to cure it. Lyra finished. Another impact rocked the station. Status report. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Jin Park, responded through the comm. Shields at 63% and dropping. Chief, these aren't regular pirates or mercenaries. Their attack patterns suggest military training. Because they are military, Zurich spoke. Voice weak, but clear. Specifically, they are Phantom Division, officially disavowed but secretly controlled by Admiral Voss of the Concordat fleet. Lyra's eyes narrowed. The same fleet that's supposedly protecting the Peace Summit. Now you begin to understand. Zurich tried to sit up, but Dr. Vale firmly pushed the ambassador back down. The evidence I carry proves Voss and others have been orchestrating attacks on both human and Concordat colonies, trying to spark a war. The summit is their final opportunity to succeed. Another blast rocked the station. Shields at 40%. Jin's voice carried barely controlled panic. Lyra made a decision. How long to prep a medical transport? Dr. Vale blinked. 10 minutes, but in that storm. The crystal formations follow predictable patterns, Zurich offered. My ship's navigation data could help plot a safe course. Do it, Lyra ordered. Jin, initiate evacuation protocols for non-essential personnel. Make it look like we're abandoning station. She turned back to Zurich. Can you move? The ambassador's scales rippled with determination. With help. The next few minutes were controlled chaos. As evacuation pods launched from the station's far side, Lyra and Dr. Vale helped Zurich to the medical transport. The pursuing ships, as Lyra had hoped, seemed distracted by the evacuating personnel. They'll realize it's a diversion soon enough, Lyra said, strapping herself into the pilot's seat. She'd flown rescue missions during the Europa crisis, but navigating a crystal storm was another level of challenge. Dr. Vale finished securing her patient. The ambassador needs proper treatment within 12 hours. The nearest facility with the right technology is the Helix Medical Station in the Carina Nebula, Zurich said. But Voss will have agents watching it. Lyra initiated launch sequences. Then we'll have to be creative. Jin, status. Phantom Division ships are moving to intercept evacuation pods. You have maybe 2 minutes before they realize you're gone. It's been an honor, Chief. Keep them busy as long as you can, then get our people out. Lyra took a deep breath. Ready? The transport detached from the station just as another barrage hit. Using the explosion as cover, Lyra guided their ship into the heart of the crystal storm. The vessel's shields whined in protest as crystalline particles battered them from all sides. Uploading navigation data, Zurich said, manipulating controls with shaking hands. The crystals resonate at specific frequencies. Match our shield harmonics. Lyra caught on quickly, adjusting their defenses. The crystals began passing through their shield-like light through glass, beautiful and deadly, but no longer a threat. Brilliant, she breathed. You've been studying our technology. We've been studying each other, Zurich corrected. Some of us believe cooperation is better than conquest. That's why Voss and his allies want war. They fear what we might become together. A warning light flashed. One of the Phantom Division ships had spotted them and was in pursuit. But in the crystal storm, with Zurich's knowledge and Lyra's piloting skills, they had a chance. The Carina Nebula is 12 hours at maximum speed, Dr. Vale noted, checking the ambassador's vital signs. We'll be cutting it close. Lyra allowed herself a grim smile. Then we better not waste time. She guided their ship deeper into the storm, where crystal formations danced like deadly ballet dancers in space. Behind them, their pursuit tried to match their maneuvers but struggled with the unfamiliar shield modifications. As they flew through the crystalline maze, Lyra couldn't help but appreciate the irony. She'd been sent to Outpost Theta 7 as punishment for disobeying orders to save lives during the Europa incident. Now here she was again, risking everything to save one life that might prevent a war. Some patterns, it seemed, were as predictable as the crystal storm's dance. The real question was, would the ending be different this time? The medical transport emerged from the crystal storm into the outer edges of the Carina Nebula, its hull bearing the scars of their desperate escape. They'd lost their pursuers hours ago, but Lyra knew better than to feel relieved. In her experience, moments of apparent safety often preceded the worst dangers. Dr. Vale's voice carried barely concealed concern. Ambassador Zerix's condition is deteriorating. The quantum decay is accelerating. Lyra studied the nebula's swirling colors ahead of them, beautiful and deadly, like everything else in this region of space. How long? 4 hours, maybe less. From the medical bed, Zerix's scales flickered weakly. There's something you need to know before we reach Helix Station. The ambassador's translator crackled with interference. The evidence I carry, it's not just about Admiral Voss. What do you mean? Lyra kept one eye on the sensors, watching for pursuit. The conspiracy extends into the human government as well. Your diplomatic security court has been compromised. Director Thaddeus Wright is working with Voss. Lyra felt her blood run cold. Wright had been the one to exile her to Theta 7 after the Europa incident. That's why you came to my station. You knew about my history with him. Yes, your disgrace was orchestrated because you discovered something on Europa that Wright wanted hidden. You were too honorable to be controlled, so you had to be discredited. The revelation hit Lyra like a physical blow. The mysterious energy signatures she detected during the rescue operation, the ones that had led to her disobeying orders, they hadn't been natural phenomena after all. A sudden alert from the ship's sensors interrupted her thoughts. Multiple ships decloaking ahead, she announced. Helix Station security vessels. No, wait. The energy signatures were wrong. They're using fake transponder codes. Phantom Division, Zerix confirmed. They predicted our destination. Dr. Vale checked their fuel reserves. We don't have enough power to run again, and even if we did, the ambassador wouldn't survive another delay. Lyra finished. She studied their tactical display, mind racing. The nebula's gases created natural interference with sensors and weapons, but it also made navigation treacherous. Ambassador, your people have been studying us. Have you been studying the nebula too? Zyrix's multifaceted eyes brightened slightly. Of course. The gas clouds contain rare elements we use in our quantum technology. There are research stations hidden throughout. Ah, I see where you're going. Lyra allowed herself a small smile. Can you access their networks? We need a haven, and I'm betting they'd be interested in proof of corruption in both our governments. The stations are automated, but Zyrix's scales shifted through several colors as the ambassador worked the ship's comm system. There, Research Station Omega 12, sending coordinates. Lyra altered their course subtly, using the nebulous currents to mask their movement. The pursuing ships spread out, trying to cut off escape routes to known safe harbors. But they weren't looking for a hidden research station. Chief, Dr. Vale said quietly, even if we reach this station, we're cut off from the summit. The evidence won't matter if we can't deliver it in time. Maybe not. Lyra's mind was already racing ahead. Ambassador, these research stations, they study quantum technology, right? The same principles as the weapon used against you. Yes, but, Zyrix's scales flickered with understanding. The stations would have equipment that could theoretically reverse the quantum decay. But it would be dangerous. Experimental. More dangerous than doing nothing. Before Xerix could respond, space itself seemed to shudder around them. A massive ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in their path, dwarfing both their vessel and their pursuers. Imperial-class dreadnought. Lyra breathed. That's Voss's flagship. The ship's communications array powered up, and a face appeared on their view screen. Human, not Concordat. Director Wright's cold eyes stared out at them. "Security Chief Harrison," he said, his voice as smooth as ever, still trying to play the hero. "I see. You have something that belongs to us. Surrender now, and I'll ensure your death is quick. Resist." He smiled. "Well, you remember what happened on Europa." Lyra met his gaze steadily. "Actually, sir, I'm starting to remember Europa very clearly, including what you tried to hide there." She cut the transmission and turned to her companions. "I have a plan, but it's going to require perfect timing and more than a little luck. Doctor, how are your quantum mechanics?" Dr. Vale's eyes widened as she caught on. "You want to use the nebula itself as a weapon, along with whatever research data we can salvage from the station." Lyra looked at Xerix. "Ambassador, I need to know, do you trust me?" The alien's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. "My dear Chief Harrison, I trusted you the moment I saw how you handled the crystal storm. Sometimes the most reliable allies are those who have been branded as traitors by corrupt leaders." Lyra nodded and began plotting their course through the nebula's treacherous gases. They had one chance to turn this trap into an opportunity, and maybe, just maybe, find out what really happened on Europa 3 years ago. Research Station Omega-12 hung in the nebula like a forgotten diamond, its crystalline structures absorbing and refracting the surrounding gases in hypnotic patterns. Lyra guided their medical transport into a concealed docking port, every movement precise. Behind them, Voss's dreadnought and its escort ships prowled the nebulous currents, searching. "Life support and power systems are minimal," Dr. Vale reported as they cycled through the airlock. "The station's been running on automatic for months." Lyra helped Xerix from the ship, the ambassador's movements growing more labored. "How long?" 2 hours, maybe less." Dr. Vale's dark eyes reflected the nebula's shifting colors through the station's transparent walls. "Whatever we're going to do, it needs to happen fast." They made their way to the station's central laboratory, where rows of experimental quantum equipment sat waiting. Xerix's scales had taken on an alarming gray tone, but the ambassador's eyes brightened at the sight. "Yes, this might work. Doctor, help me with these calibrations. The principle is similar to your human particle accelerators, but operating on a quantum level." As they worked, Lyra studied the tactical displays she patched into the station's sensors. The enemy ships were moving in a standard search pattern, but something about their formation bothered her. "They're not really looking for us," she realized suddenly. "They're hurting us. This whole nebula is about to become a kill box." "Chief," Dr. Vale called out, "we've got the quantum stabilizer online, but there's a problem. The power requirements to reverse the ambassador's condition will light up this station like a beacon." Lyra finished. "How long will the treatment take?" 30 minutes, Xerix answered. "But Lyra, you need to know something. The evidence I carry, it's not just data files. The quantum weapon they used on me was designed to destroy more than flesh. I encoded the proof of their conspiracy into my very cellular structure." Understanding dawned. That's why they haven't just blown us out of space. They need to confirm the evidence is destroyed. A proximity alert blared. Multiple ships were approaching their position. "They're done playing games," Lyra muttered. She turned to her companions. "Start the treatment. I'll buy us time." Moving to the station's control center, Lyra's hands flew over the interfaces. The nebula's gases responded to electromagnetic fields. That's why navigation was so treacherous. But if she could use the station's research equipment to manipulate those fields... The first shots from the approaching ships were warning blasts, designed to disable rather than destroy. Lyra redirected power from the station's outer sections, strengthening the shields around the laboratory. On her tactical display, she could see more ships emerging from the nebula's depths. "This is Director Wright to Research Station Omega-12. The comm system crackled. "You're surrounded. Your shields will fail in minutes. But I'm feeling generous. Surrender the ambassador, and your companions might survive." Lyra opened a channel. "Tell me something, Director. What really happened on Europa? What was worth destroying my career to keep hidden?" Still fixated on the past, Wright's voice dripped condescension. "We found something in those ice caves, something that proved we weren't ready for contact with alien civilizations. Humanity needed time to prepare, to strengthen itself. The Concordat would keep us weak dependent. Admiral Voss understands this." "You're wrong," Lyra replied, her fingers never stopping their work. "What I saw on Europa wasn't a reason to fear alien contact. It was proof we could face the unknown together. Always the idealist. Fire the disruptors. Full power." Energy beams lanced through the nebula, converging on the station. But Lyra was ready. She activated the electromagnetic pulse she'd been preparing, using the station's quantum research equipment to amplify it through the nebula's gases. The result was spectacular. The gases ignited in a cascade of quantum reactions, creating a shockwave that sent the smaller ships tumbling. Even the dreadnought shuddered under the assault. But it wasn't enough. The enemy ships were already regrouping, adjusting their shields to compensate. "Treatment at 50%, Dr. Vale called out. "But our shields are failing." Lyra's mind raced. The nebula was filled with quantum particles, just waiting to be excited into reality. The research station had been studying them, and Zyrix's evidence was encoded in quantum states. "Ambassador," she called out, "your people's quantum technology. It can influence probability itself, can't it? That's what scared them on Europa. We found proof it was possible." "Yes," Zyrix gasped through the pain of treatment. "Reality is more fluid than most believe, with enough understanding." Another blast rocked the station. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Shields critical," Dr. Vale reported. "We have maybe 2 minutes." Lyra made her decision. "Ambassador, I need access to your quantum codes. All of them. Now." Zyrix's scales flickered with surprise, then understanding. "You mean to?" "Yes." "Doctor, transfer the codes from my neural implant to the station's computer. Quickly." As the data streamed in, Lyra began to laugh. She finally understood what had really happened on Europa, and why Wright had been so desperate to cover it up. Reality itself was about to change, and this time, she was ready for it. Reality rippled around Research Station Omega-12 as Lyra initiated the quantum cascade. The nebula's gases began to glow with impossible colors as probability itself responded to the combination of Zyrix's codes and the station's experimental technology. The same phenomenon she'd witnessed in Europa's ice caves 3 years ago. But this time, she understood its purpose. "Treatment at 80%, Dr. Vale announced, her voice filled with wonder as she watched reality fluctuate around them. "The quantum decay is reversing." Director Wright's voice crackled through the comm, showing the first signs of fear. "Harrison, stop. You don't understand what you're doing. The quantum field manipulations could tear apart the fabric of space itself." "No," Lyra replied calmly, her hand steady on the controls. "That's what you never understood. It's not about tearing anything apart. It's about bringing things together." The nebula itself seemed to pulse with energy as probability waves collapsed and reformed. On their tactical display, the enemy ships' formations began to break apart as their sensors failed to cope with the quantum fluctuations. Zyrix's scales had begun to regain their iridescent sheen as the treatment progressed. "The evidence is reforming," the ambassador announced. "But more importantly, they can all see it now. The quantum probability field is making truth itself visible." Around the station, the nebula's gases formed into crystalline patterns that were simultaneously impossible and perfectly natural. Within those patterns, images began to form, holographic recordings of secret meetings, data streams showing the conspiracy's full scope, the truth about Europa. Quantum technology was never meant to be a weapon, Lyra said, understanding at last. It was meant to be a bridge, a way for different species to share consciousness, to understand each other on the deepest level. Admiral Voss's voice joined Wright's on the comm. You're destroying everything we worked for. The human race needs to stand alone, to prove its strength. Strength comes in many forms, Lyra countered. What I saw on Europa wasn't just proof of quantum technology. It was proof that we're all connected. The universe itself wants life to cooperate, to evolve together. That's what you were really afraid of. The quantum cascade reached its peak. For a moment, everyone, human and alien alike, could see the truth, the conspiracy laid bare, but more than that, the fundamental connection between all conscious beings. The possibility of a future where different species didn't just coexist, but truly understood each other. Treatment complete, Dr. Vale announced. Ambassador Zerix's quantum structure is fully restored. The ambassador stood, scales now glowing with renewed vitality. And the evidence is preserved, broadcasted through the quantum probability field to every ship in range. They cannot deny what they've seen. On their tactical display, Lyra watched as ships from both the human and Concordat fleets began arriving at the edges of the nebula. The conspiracy had been exposed, and reinforcements were coming, not to fight, but to witness. Chief, Dr. Vale said softly, the station's power core is reaching critical levels. The quantum cascade is too much for its systems. Lyra nodded. Then let's make sure this means something. She opened a general broadcast channel. To all ships in range. You've seen the truth about the conspiracy, about Europa, about what's possible when we work together. The choice is yours now. Continue on the path to war, or embrace something greater. One by one, the Phantom Division ships powered down their weapons. Even Wright's dreadnought went silent as its crew processed what they'd witnessed. They'll try to cover this up, Dr. Vale warned as they evacuated the failing station. Call it mass hallucination, sensor malfunction. They can try, Zerix replied, helping Lyra pilot their ship clear of the quantum disturbance. But truth, once seen, has a way of persisting. Like quantum probability itself, it exists in many states until observed. And now, everyone has observed it. As they cleared the nebula's edge, Lyra watched Research Station Omega-12 collapse in a final burst of quantum energy. But its purpose had been served. The Peace Summit would proceed with full knowledge of what had been attempted, and more importantly, what was possible. What happens now? Dr. Vale asked as ships from both fleets moved to escort them to safety. Lyra smiled, thinking of the wonders she'd seen in Europa's caves, now finally understood. Now we do what humanity does best. We adapt, we learn, and we move forward. Together. Zerix's scales rippled with approval. Perhaps that is why the universe guided me to your station, Lyra Harrison. Sometimes the best guardians of truth are those who have already sacrificed everything to preserve it. The nebula's gases continued their eternal dance behind them, now forever changed by what had transpired. Just as humanity and the Concordat would be changed by the truth they'd witnessed. Not all storms, Lyra reflected, came to destroy. Some came to clear the air, to make way for new beginnings. And sometimes, the most important shield wasn't one made of energy or metal, but of understanding itself.